from other events where, for example, with the Winter Formal, the majority of the student base is current students. With Frosh, it's all new students. So there's different ways to get them involved, and that requires a lot of earlier planning.
We will now move on to the closing statements, starting from Simran.
I truly believe that being a part of the SFSS is an exceptional opportunity for me to complete these goals and provide the student body with opportunities to engage with members of their faculty and their representatives. I would like all students at all campuses to be provided with science opportunities and be aware of them, enhancing their career paths. I will prioritize all requests and concerns of students and other faculty members. Thank you for your time, and feel free to ask me any questions if you have any. Thank you.
So Kukstem, thank you for listening to everybody here who's spoken today. If you do consider voting for a science rep, if you're able to, please do consider for someone who has the experience and a varied knowledge base on the types of duties we would need to perform at the SFSS. Vote for someone who will bring new ideas to SFU science. It's quite stagnant at the moment, so maybe we can try and get some new perspectives, new ideas into this very large faculty.
In my time here at SFU, I've had the opportunity to meet a truly staggering number of science students, and I have listened to the requests and suggestions and complaints about the SFSS, and I am prepared and I plan to take those right to the university level. Given my experience with departmental and faculty student unions, I believe that this is a natural next step to elevate these issues. Thank you. Please vote Jason Spence.
Thank you, everyone.
I'd like to call up those who are running for the at-large position. One of the candidates isn't able to make it today, so I'll start off by reading his statement. His name is Rehan Khan. Hello everyone, my name is Rehan Khan, and I am a fourth-year undergraduate student majoring in business and minoring in psychology. Unfortunately, I could not make it to today's debate due to academic commitments. I'm running to be your next at-large representative. It is my goal to foster a more connected university experience, and I believe I have the background necessary to do so. So we'll start off with the candidates' opening statements. We'll start off with the candidate on the right.
Hello everyone, my name is Stephanie, and I'm running to be your at-large representative. The main concerns that I plan to take on in office is a sense of community at our school, violence awareness, and then we already have an SFU facility that handles lightning on the pathways and things like that. So what new idea are you bringing into this?
Thank you for your question, Stephanie. I've had past experience with the ABN through the SVSPO, so we will be looking at resources that are available through them, and as well, I'm looking to work with the Safety and Risk Services Office to implement more programs and just have better security on campus, as well as programs such as Safe Walk.
Thank you. Stephanie, about 30 seconds to rebuttal her answer.
I don't have any. I'm leaving the work for the lightning and the sexual violence awareness to the people who are already doing the job. And I'm bringing in fresh ideas. As you said, you have experience with the events committee, and I'm just a new face bringing in fresh ideas on the board.
Thank you. We open up the floor to questions from the audience.
On the SFSS website, the last documented event was in October. So I'm wondering regarding engagement for the community, for students, how you plan on doing that, and that hasn't already been done, and how to promote it, or what new ideas you've.
Stephanie, you can start by answering that.
I already think that there's lots of events happening already on campus, and the solution to this is not to create more events. The solution to this is to spark engagement in students. So we have to create a sense of belonging on SFU and not making more events.
Thank you for your question. I believe that the main thing is creating student engagement, and I believe that through my work with the SFSS Events Committee, I've acquired the skills to know what events that students like and which ones they do not like. So I believe that these skills and knowledge prep me for this, and I have many ideas, including keeping Munchie Mondays and new events such as hosting a monthly pub nights.
Next question.
Hello. Over the last year, the SFSS has faced many hardships and even lost one of its at-large reps, along with other board members. Do you currently think that the SFSS is in a good state? And if not, what are your plans on improving it?
Thank you for your question. The SFSS has faced a tough year. They went through the impeachment and they lost at-large as well as one more position. So I believe that the reputation of the SFSS needs to be improved on within the student population, and to my goal is to rebuild relationships and trust and focus on transparency and consultation with the undergrad students.
I don't think that the SFSS is in current good standing with everything that it went through. So what I plan to do is to advocate for to prioritize student advocacy, and other former board, I don't want to call anybody out or anything, but then you keep talking about how you have experience, but the last event was in October. So what events were done? So I feel like we need to prioritize student advocacy, people who would say that they will do something and stick to it, people who have more values over experience.
Next question.
I saw a post made by one of the candidates about the lack of student body participation, and by student body I mean the students of SFU participation in voting, and while the reality is that most of them don't know about the Simon Fraser Student Society, most of them don't actually care, and when they do find out, they don't care to find out more about it. So how do you intend to change that?
Stephanie may go first.
This particular issue is why I brought up the advice for the hoodies. The hoodie is going to be a three-way with SFSS, SFU, and the Alumni Association. We will be working on Welcome Day to inform students about the SFSS and SFU student body and everything, so that from the jump, they're already aware of SFSS and everything that we do. So this is just a nice way to engage students. Yeah.
I believe that when you approach a student and you're campaigning, I believe that it should be your goal to understand them and understand what they want, not to get the vote. Once the student feels that you're not there for just the vote and that you actually care, I think that's where it is. You need to show them that you care and that you understand, and then it's not just about the vote.
We'll take our last question.
Hello, good luck to both of you in the election. So I have a question. The faculty representatives usually have a role that's associated with the faculty and representing the faculty. The VPs usually have also a role that's associated with a specific part of the SFSS, as well as the president is an overarching role that controls or supports the rest of the board. So in your opinion, what do you think the role of the at-large representative is?
We'll start off with Manit.
Thank you for the question. I believe that my goal is to represent all undergraduate students, and it will be my job to understand the needs of these students and do everything in my control to execute them.
My goal would be to spark student engagement, because I am a formerly dissociated student. I would never participate in any events, no matter how many events were made in SFU. So I understand what it's like to be a disengaged student in this university, and I will be coming with that perspective in everything that I do, keeping those students in mind in every decision that I make, and hoping to reach those students as well. So mine is just to spark student engagement in everything that I do.
Thank you. We'll move on to your closing statements. Each of you have 30 seconds.
Thank you everyone for coming. Most of the promises I've made here today are very big ideas, and that's because the SFSS needs to think big again. Big ideas are achieved by taking a lot of small steps and setting up infrastructures in place to cause a ripple effect of change. A board can work with tears and blood, but if this work isn't directed towards student core complaints, it would still leave a lot of students feeling bitter, nonchalant, and hopeless towards the SFU and the SFSS. Wouldn't it be beautiful to have a board that knows where the student itch is and works actively to relieve us of this itch? Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day and joining us here. I hope that you have all agreed with whatever I have to say, and please feel free to contact me if you have any concerns or questions.
Okay, we're going to be taking a 5-minute break before going into the VP role debates. So everybody can come back by 3 p.m. It'll be great.
There's a lag on the live stream. Someone said there's a lag on the live stream. Run to the office.
Yeah, I got it.
I have a question. I don't know what to answer. I'm in environmental science. Do I get to vote for both environment and science rep? Do you know?
I don't know. She might know.
Hi.
Hi.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you enrolled in a course for both faculties?
No. So I'm only enrolled in environment courses, but my major is in environmental science.
Right.
So
So you want to enroll for environment, and what was the other one?
And science.
And science.
Yeah.
So you're not taking any science courses?
Not right now.
Yeah.
So no.
You would know.
Okay, so if I was taking a science course, I would be able to vote for both.
So for example, if you're in any electives and you have an arts course, then you'd be able to vote.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Okay, that's cool. Thanks. I don't want around the
Yeah, I'm stuck here with the. I'm in charge of that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were doing this.
Yeah, I never get involved in student politics, but I'd rather.
I was like, when I heard, because I couldn't see, because I was sitting back there, but then when I heard like 30 seconds, I was like, that sounds like someone I know.
You read for this book? I don't love my school that much. How you doing? Everything. Yeah, I know because everything. Huh? Oh man, I'm like left with one more. Yeah, I suppose there's gonna like be a lot of drama at some point.
Even just now,
Yeah. Like damn, who's China running against? Awesome. So yeah, I think she got us though. I'll tell you the questions, but that'll be it. One is for like stopping, one is like continuing. Like one, I'm just doing like VP Finance, Tawandas, and then I'm done.
Isn't it just him though?
Yeah.
He's just debating himself.
Yeah, literally.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Alright, catch you later. That's what I said. Hi, we'll be starting promptly in the next few minutes, so please grab your seats. The next debate will be for the VP Finance role. I'd like to call up the candidate. Okay, so we're going to start off with your opening statement. You've got 30 seconds. I'll show you the countdown from when you're left with 5 seconds left.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tanda Nigel Chitobi, and I'm running to be your next Vice President of Finance. I decided to step up to the plate because I'm a firm believer of being the change that you want to see. And I would love to devote my last year to working and serving you guys to create amazing experiences. We all want to be proud of being at SFU whilst we're here and after we leave. So let's work together and create those memorable experiences. Thank you.
So we'll start off with, for the VP positions, they are pre-made questions from the IEC, and those are questions that the candidates are going to be answering. So to start off, majority of the VP finances have campaigned on a revamped check rec process. How will you achieve this, and do you have any specific ideas going on?
Right, so the check requisition process, it's one of my main priorities. I need to fix that because it's currently harming students. Students are going for periods as long as 6 to more weeks without having reimbursed their monies. So from my preliminary research, I've been told that a lot of the issues we're facing are staffing issues. They're coming from the staff side, the finance staff side. So what I intend to do is work with them and employ a bottleneck analysis. This is, analyzing the current process and finding out what the actual problem is, because when I know what the current problem is, then I'll be able to know what exactly to fix. So it's doing that research with the staff team. Thanks.
So the second question is, if you could reallocate funds towards increasing bursary funding or club core funding, what would you choose to prioritize and why?
Okay, well, that's a very tough one to be subjective upon. I know they're both equally important, but I think as the main mandate of the SFSS to promote and build engagement and community, I think we would prioritize, funding clubs, because given the current infrastructure that we have, we can only foster community and engagement through our clubs and student unions. So if they need funding to actually, execute their duties well, develop their initiatives, then they will definitely get high priority. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up we'll open up the floor to questions from the audience.
Hello. As a VP Finance, you're going to be making a lot of tough decisions. So what I want to know is, how do you define student value, and what criteria specifically will you be using to assess this?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, for me, student value is like my, I mentioned at the beginning. It's the experiences. Are they happy? Within the various student groups, are they getting enough support that they need from the student society? And I think to evaluate that, one of the main things that I'm, going to do and implement is making myself very accessible and available. So, people should be open to come and chat with me, not just over email. They should be able to walk through into the office, and we can talk if there's any issues, and we can work together to try and rectify that. So in terms of evaluation, I'm very open. Let's talk. And let me know how everything is going and how best I can help. So I want to be, I'm going to be available and accessible myself. But as well, I think we should have a system.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming out today. My name is Christina Lutzik, and I'm excited to run as your next VP Student Services. I have extensive experience working on the board this past year. I've worked towards improving student services, and I'll plan to continue that work during my future term. I will plan to work to improve student safety, accessibility, and ensure a smooth and successful transition to the sub. I believe I provided tremendous value to the board, and I will continue to do so for the coming year. And I'm dedicated to improving the student experience, and I'm excited to take on the role.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the IEC question. As a VP Student Services, you will be in charge with the responsibility of assuming the duties of the president if they were to be impeached, resign, or abandon office. How would you handle those duties if called upon? We'll start with Christina.
So, in the unlikely case that happens, I have full confidence that I will be able to take on those roles. I believe this year kind of attests to that experience. I definitely have experience under what a bad presidential candidate would be like and what a good one would be like, and I think I'm fully prepared with my experience on board, with my very unique experience of actually seeing a student services go through that, to be the leader that the board would need, again, in the unlikely case that that would happen.
Thank you for the question. In the unlikely case that it does happen, although in the past 2 years I think we have enough experience that it probably will happen, I have had enough experience with activism. I have, throughout my life in Canada, which is 5 years, I've centered the voice of activism in marginalized groups. This has been my entire life. If I were to be put in that situation and take over that role, I would continue to do the work that our potential candidates for the position might do, and surround ourselves with the things that we need, and center marginalized groups in every action that I take, and accessibility, and continue to work on the policy that I have to create.
So if the president is impeached, the VP Student Services does take on the role. I believe that the role of the VP Student Services is to advocate for the students and be a representative for the student and the services that they require on the board. So if the president were to be impeached and I were to become the next acting president, I'd like to act as an integrated leader which involves all 15 remaining members of the board that act as a collective unit which can take the problems that the previous president did have and work on improving it so SFU can become more joined and engaging.
Thank you. Now we will start with questions from candidates. So we'll start with Simran. So Simran, you may propose.
My question is directed to Prince. On your platform, you talk about a community. And considering that SFSS has no sexual violence prevention policy and you never mentioned it, and I have honestly never seen you work on it, how do you plan on building a community that is safe?
Thank you, Simran. I actually do mention mental health and sexual violence on my platform. A big thing that I want to work on is improving the display and the advertisement of the services that SFU does provide. The biggest thing between the SFSS operation and governance with the students is the communication. There's no communication there. There's services that do exist which students cannot utilize because they're not properly aware of it. Myself, I did end up going on the SFU mental health website and I did see the wait times that do exist. And all this has to be addressed, but the biggest thing is to make students more aware about what we have available for them.
Thank you. Now you can do your rebuttal.
Thank you for the answer, although it does not necessarily answer my question considering there is no policy. So even though we do have services, they're from SFU. SFSS still does not have a policy. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we will move on to Christina. You can pose your question.
Okay. For Simran, so the student services position has become smaller over the past few years, especially with the change into the Carver governance model. How do you plan on keeping the role relevant in terms of this change in governance model?
Thank you, Christina, for your question. For starters, the student services job isn't outlined as well as it should have. It just mentions the things that we really, really need to do, that is to advocate for the UPass and the health and dental. Student services is much more than that. We have actual services that students need and no access to them. I plan on working towards them, which is basically the outline for my entire platform.
No rebuttal? Okay, so Prince, now you may propose your question.
My question is for Christina. The last year's board of directors has had an issue come up about transparency. My question for Christina is, do you think transparency between the SFSS and the students is important? And if elected, what will you do to improve the transparency that currently is lacking?
I know this comes up every year. Transparency is obviously a hot topic for a lot of students. It is obviously very important. We want our students to know what we're doing for them, and what they have access to. And I think some of the ways we work toward that is actually one of the ways showing the voting ratios at the table, so you kind of know who's advocating for your needs. We've also done a social media revamp, so I know some of our faculty reps have worked on that to make sure that we really have all of our events, all of our services laid out really easy to follow. And, we've been working on trying to make even the site more accessible so that all of our students are really aware of what's going on.
As Christina did mention, transparency is a really big issue, and groups are being affected by it. Decisions being made on groups' behalf aren't being presented. Recently, we did have an issue where a group had a proposal to the SFSS where they did have a meeting, but they were not properly informed of the time of the meeting. How can we expect the board of directors to make decisions for groups when the groups aren't being invited to the meetings themselves? Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to audience questions.
Hi folks, really glad to see 3 candidates running for student services. This is great. My question is a bit of a 2-step question, so I hope you guys address both points. The student services role obviously covers the health and dental plan. I'd like to know what you guys think of the current provision on what is covered in the plan, and if you like it or don't like it, what additional services would you be offering to students if you were to make any changes? Thank you.
We'll start with Simran.
Thank you for your question, Summer. To be honest, I don't personally like the current plan at all. And the reason for that is that it's a retroactive approach. I think, and most of the times when students actually go forward for that services, they have to wait for so long. Maybe they need health and dental care, but they cannot afford the on-the-spot payments. And in future, if I do get elected, I would like to work on that so that it's not too late for them to actually get the services they need.
The current health and dental plan that the SFSS does provide is a 12-month coverage for the price of $254.36, which is included inside your student fees that you pay with your classes. What I would like to do is make the eligibility for the health and dental plan more lenient. Therefore, we can negotiate the price, have a lower price, and create better policies. The way I do this is we do have a group at SFU where the FIC college students, they're not eligible for the same plan we are. So a big thing I'd negotiate is increasing the population that is eligible for the health and dental plan. Therefore, we can negotiate a better contract that better provides the health and dental services students need at SFU.
So yeah, as mentioned before, the health and dental plan is under the portfolio of student services. So I would take a lot of time combing through all those policies and what we currently have and seeing where we can make those changes to make it more affordable for students and making sure they're informed on what exactly they're covered with and how to improve that coverage and making those recommendations to future VP student services so they can carry on that work. Another thing to look to would be legal aid, which we have been looking towards at the SFSS. So providing that legal support to students when they need it, as well as looking to other accessibility issues in terms with our health and dental plan.
Hi guys. So the food bank is one of the services that's the most important, or at least easiest to pitch. Everyone agrees that we need, a food bank for students when they're in need. But the problem is we raised the amount that we've been contributing in SFU because it's just not enough. There's too many people who don't need it, who are actually going. I've talked to many of them. And the people who do need it don't know about it. So how can we change that? How can we change the food bank so that it's better for the students who need it?
We'll start with Prince.
The issue with the food bank is that students aren't being aware. That's similar to many of the things that the SFSS does offer, the services that are offered to students. Students aren't being made aware of what's offered to them. SFU has 25,000 students. That's the most it's ever had. And the SFSS does run on a surplus. So increasing the amount of staff to have an outreach program, tell students, hey, if you are in need, here's what's available to you. So more students are aware so they could get the help that they need.
Food service is actually a big part of my own platform itself because I do agree that there is a resource, the voucher that we have, it's $25, 3 of them for one semester, and it is not enough. And many people who do get it, they might not need it, but the point remains that who are we to judge on that factor? That is the whole point of this voucher, so we don't judge them on their financial need. However, there should be more provisions for people who are in financial need. In that case, there are always organizations like Quest who take financial need into account. Thank you.
So in terms of the food bank, I'm not sure that the biggest issue is students not knowing about it or just increasing our vouchers. Vouchers aren't enough. So if the cost has been going up for these vouchers, we need to do a complete overhaul and look at a completely different way to do it. We need to have a system that's going to be more sustainable in that effect. We have been doing, or the SFSS has already been looking into new ways to do that. So I do want to support that project. Our CPRC is currently doing consultations with students who might be affected. So I think continuing those projects and doing a complete restructure.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello. So in light of I would say over the last 2 years, the recent discussions and controversy over food and beverage services and the copy center closing, I do have a really tough question that has come up time and time again from those discussions, and it's how do you differentiate between a service and a business? So what I want to know is what is your perspective on that differentiation, and at what point does a service become unsustainable?
We'll start with Christina on this one.
Thank you for the question, Matthew. So I think that does bring up a really good point. The Student Society does support services for students, and it's intended to be services. But part of our job as Board of Directors is to make sure that those services are being effective for our students and they're not taking away from others. If we're running a several $1,000s deficit in certain areas, we have to look at it and really look at the pros and cons and see if there are other services that we can invest more into, if there are other options that can house these services that are running the deficit.
Hi. So in regards to when I'm concerned, services and business is a completely separate thing. There are some things that are just not meant to make money. In regards to the copy center, it was not meant to make money. And although it was in deficit, the deficit was consistently decreasing. And even if we are about to shut down a service, I personally believe that there has to be an extensive amount of consultation, because irrespective of whether we think it's a business or a service, it's about students and what they think they actually need.
This goes back to what the SFSS really is, and it's to represent the students of SFU. I don't see a deficit in a service that students are using as necessarily a bad thing. I see it as an investment in the students. If the students feel like they need a service and they're utilizing that service, but it doesn't really have a cost benefit to the SFSS, it should still be there because it doesn't exist to make money. The SFSS is a non-profit. It's there as an investment where all students can get the help they need and they're provided.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, so I'm sure you're aware of the mental health crisis on campus. As VP of Student Services, it is important to ensure that students are receiving the mental health services they deserve. Some of you, but not all of you, have mentioned working with health and counseling services, but to what degree? What mental health services would be beneficial in addressing the wait times, reduce funding for current services, while ensuring a personalized experience to those in mental health distress?
We'll start with Simran on this one.
Thank you for your question. Although mental health isn't mentioned in my platform, it is a big deal for me altogether. Irrespective of how my mental state is, I think it's necessary to have resources provided for students who need it immediately. And so far, the health and counseling is very limited to the resources that they have, mainly because the psychologists they have are grad students and they're lacking in the resources. I personally think that there should be a good consultation with the students as to what they need and how exactly we could provide them. Is it whether it's SFSS help, whether it's the SFE health and counseling, or
the way we can increase the mental health, helping students that suffer with mental health at SFU is to increase the availability of where they could get help. We need peer support, we need staff support, and we need to increase the online support that we offer. It's hard to come forward when you have mental health problems. And a big thing to do is make it more accessible, where if a student feels like they need help online, they could go directly online. If they feel like they need to meet one-on-one with a professional, they could meet one-on-one with a professional without dealing with the unnecessarily long wait times. It's about where we can help students on all degrees.
Thank you for your question. So actually one of the projects that I have been working on for quite some time now is trying to increase our health and wellness services. So part of that would include a peer support system. So not only are we giving the platform for students to get help, it's giving students who are interested in the topic of supporting their friends, that have experience in the area to gain even more experience. Another part of that would be having a staff that would help support with all of this. Furthermore, we need to make sure we're investing in preventing mental health crises as well.
Thank you. This will be the last question.
Over the past couple of years, we have board members saying that they will create policies pertaining to sexual violence, and we haven't seen anything being done about it. How can we trust as students that something will be done about this issue? Thank you.
Prince, you may start.
The first step is holding your elected representatives responsible. You all right here are here to listen to a 3-hour debate so you know what we are promising so you can hold us accountable in the future. If we're making false promises to you, I highly encourage students to go at the representatives that they elected, as those 25,000 students of SFU are the ones that are being represented on the board. And if their ideals aren't being shown by the board member, they have the right to say something and perhaps take that position of power from them.
Thank you.
Because this is personal to me. Most days I'm more victim than I am a survivor. In fact, just last Saturday when I got awarded as the SFSS Women of the Year from FAS, one of the board members threatened me that he would F my life up. Of course, he used the actual word, but no one gets to go around dehumanizing who you are, especially someone who is in a position of power. I'm here to stand for the people who have been victimized, because I don't need anyone else to go around telling me otherwise. I'm here for you.
I think many can agree this is a really pressing issue. I'm sure you've heard of the issues that we had on board this year as well. That being said, myself and some other board members have been working on getting GP44 to cover our SFSS board members and to really extend that coverage to events and stuff that we hold, because currently we do not have the platform to enforce these policies. That being said, we would like to ensure that this is in place so that we can work towards that in the future and making sure that we do have these platforms.
Thank you for all the questions. We will now move on to closing statements, starting with Christina.
So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out here again today. You know, I have a lot of experience on the board, and I do have a lot of exciting plans and initiatives that I do want to carry forward. And I do believe I have the necessary skills and qualifications, and I'd be able to best serve the student. With that being said, I really hope everyone does take the time to vote and to make an informed decision.
Thank you everyone for coming out and for all your good questions. I would like to say vote for me because I'm here for you, and because for me your safety is not an afterthought. For SFSS, your safety should not fall under a gray area, a vacuum that you might not be able to help us out with. And also because accessibility should not be a question. A person who is on a cane should not have to worry whether this place is accessible or not. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone here and watching online. I would like to say the SFSS VP Student Services is here to represent the student. And if they're not following what they promise, that's a huge problem. So I would like to step forward and say, I would like to be your VP Student Services so I can give you guys the services I promise and work and hear back from you guys so we could increase the community at SFU. Thank you.
We now like to call up the VP Student Life candidate. So unfortunately, the other VP Student Life candidate couldn't be here. She has sent in a statement. This is for Jessica. Hi everyone, thanks for coming out to the debate today. I'm incredibly sorry that I was unable to make debates as I have a mandatory in-class assignment right now. With that being said, I'm running for VP Student Life because I'm the best candidate for the position as I have the necessary qualifications, skills, and experience. When elected, I will restructure the events committee so it will be maximizing efficiency, which will allow for more quality and diverse events to happen on campus. Furthermore, I'll be bringing a fall kickoff back as I have already been working with staff on this project. Remember to vote for me March 19th to the 21st. With that being said, Balkis, you can start with your opening statements.
Hello, my name is Balkis Jama, and I'm running for VP Student Life. I've noticed that over the years, candidates always talk about student engagement, but student apathy still plagues the school. And I think that it's just because students have lost faith in their society, and that's what my goal this year is to rebuild that faith that has been damaged over the years.
Thank you. So the IAC's question for you is, with the fall kickoff concert annually budgeted for by the society and many sponsorship opportunities available, can students expect a commitment from you to see a fall 2019 concert? If so, how? If not, why?
So absolutely, there will be a fall kickoff concert if I'm elected. Not only do I want to ensure this year's to happen, I want to start a committee that'll plan for the next year's concert, so start fundraising and planning. Right now, I think it goes up until April. We can look into gaming grants. Gaming grants, we can get up to $100,000 of sponsorship just from gaming grants for this fall kickoff. So fall kickoff should happen. It's been happening every year. It can continue to happen.
We'll now open up questions to the audience.
Hi. So one of the jobs of the student life is to work with the clubs and student unions. and not in the same capacity as faculty reps, because while the applied sciences faculty rep has 4 student unions, you're going to have 300 clubs and 50 student unions. So how are you going to work in a different environment, different capacity to empower them?
Right. So the first thing I would like to do when elected is meet with groups. And obviously it's not realistic to meet with 300 plus groups, but we can certainly invite groups by categories or based on what they do. So advocacy groups, cultural groups, game groups. We can invite, I plan to consult with each of them to simply ask what is it that SFSS can do to support you. That being said, I also have a budget plan to increase core funding for clubs and student unions so that they can rely less on just grants.
I am at West Mall.
Yeah, that's all.
I'm in Berkeley campus, and right now
We can do the next question.
By Simon Fraser University and the Simon Fraser Student Society's elected officials.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was wondering if
politics. So
there could be less distractions if
possible. Thank you.
Because
it's kind of hard to focus.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you.
So I've realized that
all the
over
witnesses here will understand dirty politics because we will take this to television. Keep doing your debates, guys. Great job, President.
Go for it.
Okay. So I've seen for the past 1 year since April last year, April 2018, the SFSS the board of SFSS has been against the black student space being in existence. But I see that we are being used in a sense for political gains, in a sense as in promoting black issues and so on. My question is, are we as black people just being used for political gains as to actually serving us as part of the student body?
So thank you for that great question. This is definitely personal too, as I've been upset at the lack of communication between certain groups in the Rotunda, and one of them being SFU SOCA, the Students of Caribbean African Ancestry. And it's important that we recognize that these groups, like SFPIRG and SOCA and the radio, these are all groups that do advocacy works that deserve to continue doing what they're doing. And we don't have to claim things in the name of betterment for all students at the expense of already marginalized groups.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sam, you can go ahead.
If you can't hear anything I say, just let me know and I'll repeat it. So outside of anecdotal experiences and personal conversation, what research have you done that you've performed and data points have you collected to assess the social environment at SFU? So what key performance indicators will you use to measure the student value that your proposed events and kickoff initiatives will bring? Thanks.
Wait, can you repeat that again, please?
Yes. So like outside of personal conversations, what research and data points have you collected to improve the student life experience and initiative?
Okay, thanks for that question. So over the year, I've been a part of data collecting in person, as well as sending out a survey for people to answer. Just questions about campus life and engagement, and talking to students definitely gives you a sense of the atmosphere on the community. So I feel like I have a strong sense of what needs to happen, and what needs to happen is that students need to trust the society again. And that can happen by just having clear and regular consultations with the students so that people know what's up. They have a say in what happens.
Thank you. Any more audience questions?
Can you wait for me to get there?
Absolutely.
Authorities that provide services to Canadians to not feel intimidated, threatened by anything. Thank you. And we will take this to national television as a lawsuit against the science.
Hi, thank you very much for doing all of this. And I have a question. What is your understanding of the current issues that are impacting lots of different minority groups, including disabled students on this campus? Thank you.
I didn't hear the first part. Can you repeat that?
I was basically just being nice to you. So the question is, what's your understanding of the issues that different groups have, including disabled students on this campus?
Right. So I think a huge issue is that I don't have a huge understanding, and that obviously is a problem because there is a lack of awareness that surrounds students, in particular students with disabilities, right? So one of the priorities, first things I want to do is consult with activist groups and groups that do work with for disabled students, among disabled students, to see how can we better support you? What are things we can do? I do think that there has been a lack of focus on these groups. And schools should be accessible to everyone, not just the ones who can afford to be here.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience?
So, in the past, the MSO position was split into VP Student Services as well as VP Student Life, right? We all can agree that the ultimate goal for students, ideally for me, should be to get employment, right? Because again, you're paying here for a service of knowledge to equip you to be able to move on after academia and essentially make money than, you know, minimum wage or living wage, because now you're an intellectual. As VP Student Life, describe and, you know, answer if you believe events, one, is a service to students, if events has the potential to create opportunities of networking as well as future employment, and giving organizers are professionals, much like doctors and lawyers. Part of, you know, the VP Student Life's responsibility.
Coyote, can you wrap up your question, please?
That's what we're doing, but she's new to the student society, so I have to give her some form of education to be able to articulate ourselves. So do you think the role of the VP Student Life is only to focus on students or to build relationships with community stakeholders, both alumni and external, as opposed to calling the cops an alumni?
You don't have to answer if you don't know. Just try your best, I guess.
No, I do want to answer. I just need a second to
it.
like collect my thoughts. I hope I'm not being timed yet. Am I?
Start the time as soon as you're ready.
I don't think that you can separate that networking opportunities and potential from the events that students would be able to partake in, organize. The point of having opportunities on campus is to expose students to potential things that they could do, maybe interests, hobbies, literally anything. There are so many opportunities that come from events, organizing events, that could be used to a student's advantage. So I hope that clears up the question.
So would you call the cops on alumni or build relationships with them if elected as, you know, VP Student Life?
There's no need to call the cops if nothing happened. So
thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for the audience questions. We'll move on to your closing statements.
Sure. Okay. So, many candidates today highlight their experience on the board as a strength, but based on this year's track record, I just want to ask, is that really something of value? Is that something to be proud of? It takes more than a few pancake breakfasts to run a student society. And I believe in genuinely doing what's best for the students, keeping students' interest in mind. And that comes with consulting students, following up with students, so not just sending out a survey, but actually talking to people face-to-face in focus groups. And I believe that we need to do better. We must do better in having the students' voices heard.
Thank you. We now like to call up the candidates for Vice President External Relations. We can start with the opening statements, and we'll start from Ali.
Thank you, R. Greetings, everyone. My name is Ali Versi, and I'm running to be your next VP for External Relations. I'm running for this position because we need new representation. Over the past year, students have witnessed the most embarrassing part of SFSS, a board which did not keep the interests of students in mind. And for 7 months, this board refused to fill 3 vacant positions, including the president's, leaving 26,000 students without proper representation. Therefore, I'm running to make the SFSS to work better for the students and to restore faith in our student government. And I invite you to join me in this.
Jasdeep.
Hello everyone, my name is Jasdeep Gill, and I'm seeking re-election for the position of VP External Relations. This past year, no doubt, has been a very tough one for the student society, and my priority throughout the year was to make sure that our internal conflicts did not affect the external work that we do. Throughout this past year, we have had major wins when it comes to our provincial lobbying. One of the big ones being that you guys have all heard of is the elimination of interest on student loans. We have also reached rental rights agreements with coalitions of student unions across the province, and we are currently working to elevate the student society to a federal level of lobbying. I thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. So we'll start with a question from the IEC. Given that the society no longer has a bylaw restriction on the society joining larger student organizations, such as the Canadian Federation of Students, that collects student fees, would you be in favor of joining such organizations? If you were, would students be consulted before that would happen? We can start with Jasdeep.
Thank you. Previously, we have been a part of the Canadian Federation of Students a couple years back. We had a really messy separation with them. And I believe there is strong value in being an independent student union because we are the second largest in the province. So we have enough numbers for us to be taken seriously when we do go to the province or the federal government. At the same time, we have great relationships with these other student unions, one of them being the BC Federation of Students and the Alliance of BC Students. We can work along with them without having to pay into fee structures. That's never been something that they've held as a need for us. So being independent provides us the value that we can take needs that are specific to our students to the table without having to minimize those.
Thank you. Ali?
Thank you for the question. I think this decision needs to be consulted. Students will be thoroughly consulted if we need to join the Canadian Federation for Students. If there is a real value for students to join the federation, then I see no problem with that. However, this decision must be consulted. The students will be consulted thoroughly before the board makes such a decision.
Thank you. We'll start with a question from Ali.
Sure. So Jasdeep, in your platform last year, you pledged to increase the indigenization of our campus as an issue that is close to the hearts of many. And this is a direct quote. My question to you, therefore, is why should the students trust you again when you acted in complete opposition to your campaign promise by evicting FNSA and denying them space at the Student Union building?
FNSA actually has a current suite allotted to them at the Student Union building. They have toured the suite as well with our Student Union building manager. Again, I mentioned that in my platform, but I think a lot of my year has been learning and meeting with FNSA every month. I think part of my role moving forward is to not actually be the spokesperson for them. It's actually using my platform and giving them more opportunities to speak on their behalf. There's a lot of great activism in that community, and my role is to just put that forward.
Thank you.
You know, the only thing that is worse than not fulfilling a campaign promise is going in the opposite and exact reverse direction of that. And quite frankly, I think it's hard for students to trust, to put their faith in a candidate, in a candidate who does not fulfill their campaign promises again. If you ask FNSA, I think FNSA would be in complete opposition to what you say, because they were not consulted, and your decision, your board's decision, has further marginalized them as an already marginalized group.
We'll be moving on to Jasdeep's question.
Okay, so in your platform you mentioned a 2-year tuition freeze, and this is a great student movement with the spirit of reducing the cost of education for students on campus. We've seen this around campus a lot. I just want to know what your plan is during that 2-year freeze. What changes do you plan on making, and what type of lobbying do you plan on doing within those 2 years?
Thank you for that very important question. Tuition freeze is a big part of my campaign. So presently there is a 2% cap for domestic students. However, for international students, there is no cap. SFU, for incoming international students, SFU can increase tuition by as much as it likes. For current international students, there's a 4% cap. So my campaign, my lobbying will lobby the provincial government to advocate for a similar 2% cap on international student fees per year, only if it is necessary to sustain those services.
Okay, we will move on to questions from the audience.
Hello, and good luck to you both. I had a question regarding the advocacy work that the VP External does. So this year, the advocacy committee was removed, and there was a new committee that was made called the Federal, Provincial, and Municipal Lobbying Committee. And what my question is a lot of advocacy work we do is, yes, there is a government focus, but we also advocate to the university. We advocate to SFU. And an example of that is when we advocated for space expansion in Surrey campus at SFU. And we did that towards working with the university instead of working with the government. So when it comes to advocacy initiatives that are outside of advocating to the government, what role does that play now, and where would that fall, and how does that influence the type of role that you will have? So where will advocacy to university fall now that the advocacy committee is gone?
We'll start with Jasdeep.
So when that advocacy committee was changed, the reason for it was there was a lot going on in simply the advocacy committee. We were doing a lot of provincial lobbying, but at the same time trying to focus on the university as well. This year that was transferred into the portfolio of the university relations. So the university's committee is where that is housed, and we felt that was most appropriate because as external relations, my focus is usually with stakeholders outside of our campus, and VP University Relations is better suited to actually support university advocacy.
Thank you for the question, and your question directly addresses the duties and responsibilities for the VP of University Relations. However, I think it is important for the entire board to work together. Now, we understand the previous board did not do the best job in working together. There were a lot of fires, and they had to put out those fires, and it was really difficult for them to work together. If elected, I promise that I will do my best to keep open communication and keep those channels open for university relations and external relations to work together to improve those kind of services that you're talking about.
Thanks, guys. My question is simple. How do you plan on improving GP 44?
We'll start with Ali.
Thank you for the question. So GP 44 is a very important issue for SFU. SFU approached SFSS, the previous boards of SFSS to to get on board and fill in the gaps of GP 44, but the boards rejected that. The previous board specifically had a big opportunity to fill in that gap and reform the GP 44. However, they failed to do that, and this is mentioned in the platform and on the peak, that Jasdeep actually did not manage to reform GP 44, so I will make sure that...
We'll be moving on to the next question. Thank you, Ali. Next, Jasdeep, go.
Okay, so GP44 is something that unfortunately we've had some poor experiences with internally on the board. 3 incidents of sexual harassment within the board actually led us to figuring out there's huge gaps in jurisdiction when it comes to that policy. And Ali's actually incorrect. I've been working alongside Christina and Amrita and the university administration and actually creating an MOU with the university to fix these gaps. And this is something very personal to us because we realized through our own experiences on the board that this policy does not cover everyone. If you're off campus and SFSS...
Thank you, Jasdeep. That's all the time we have. Jeffrey, go for your question.
Thanks. So a lot of initiatives, there's a lot of different initiatives that SFU students take. One of them is often something, let's say, philanthropic, right, outside of SFU. But the problem is the mandate of the SFSS is to advocate for the needs of the SFU students. So is there a justification? Should external advocacy and supporting the community be something that we're doing, or should it not be a priority?
We'll start with Jasdeep.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I think you're correct in pointing out that our first priority is undergraduate students at SFSS. That's something that takes up a lot of my time, and oftentimes we see that there's so many priorities that students have, we just don't get around to everything that we do. So I do think that our first priority is to the students, but at the same time, when there's instances that we can help other institutions or other organizations out, we do take on that role. One example being when we went to the province this year, we realized that smaller universities in northern BC actually have way worse sexual violence policies than we do. So part of my role was to make sure that we share our resources with
Thank you,
them.
Jasdeep. We're going to move on to Ali.
Thank you for the question. I don't think it has to be one or the other. There's great opportunity in combining these two relations to make sure that we're exhausting all our platforms to make sure we're giving the best services that we can for the students at SFU. So whether that is working with external organizations, student societies from other institutions, there is great opportunity to learn from each other and combine our resources to increase the services.
Thank you.
Hello and thank you. I'm glad that the tuition freeze campaign was mentioned in your debate, and I was just wondering, one thing that's very important to the campaign right now is if it's successful, we want to be finding ways to work with the university to put pressure on the provincial government to increase public funding to the university, which is something that has been in decline for decades. And so my question to you is just very simply, what would be your stance on increasing public funding if you were to be elected? Thank you.
We'll start with Ali.
I'm in favor of increasing funding for education because I think education is a very important social service. Education is not a luxury. So when we're talking about funding for such services, it's not really something that, that has to be disagreed on, right? Education is an important priority for all governments, whether it's a provincial government, federal government, or municipal governments. And so those kind of fundings should always keep coming to schools.
Jasdeep.
Thank you for the question. So Ellie's correct. I think the provincial government does need to invest a lot more into advanced education. This year when we lobbied, we requested for $200 million annual investment into education, and that will help cut down on the fees that students pay, whether it's international or the ancillary fees that end up going up. Just to give you guys a brief overview of the numbers, the provincial government currently makes about $1,345 million. $1,300 million from
Thank you, Jasdeep. We're going to move on to the last question for this debate.
So my name is Colin Fowler. I am a co-founder of Build the SV Gondola campaign. We're so fortunate that there's been lots of movement, both in the media and by the students, as well as Darryl and I on this issue. But we haven't seen anything in the SFSS minutes, lobbying reports, or anything else publicly. Both of you mentioned the gondola. We're very thankful for that. What direct work have you done in the last little while, and what do you think the next steps are moving forward? Thank you so much.
I'll start with Jasdeep.
Thank you, Colin, for the question. So the gondola, we haven't lobbied on it directly through the SFSS. Unfortunately, we did not have enough time. A lot of my time was split between provincial lobbying directly with other coalitions, and the gondola isn't their priority because this is a SFU-specific issue. However, we had the opportunity to discuss the tank farm safety plan with different provincial parties. Upcoming in this term that I will complete, we are going to Ottawa to discuss with the federal government about a tank farm safety plan, and a key portion of that is the gondola. So that's something that I'm hoping to complete in this first term and hoping to carry on into my second term.
Thank you, Jasdeep. Ali?
Thank you, Colin, for that great question. So the gondola has been a subject since 2011. In the last little while, actually just 3 weeks ago, I spoke to Mayor Mike Hurley, I spoke to MP Peter Julian, I spoke to Councillor Pietro Calindero, and one more councillor from the city of Burnaby to ask what progress is being made on the gondola. And they say that funding is not an issue. They say that students need to push up the advocacy for the gondola. And I'm thankful for Jasdeep for being honest that the SFSS has not advocated for the gondola. When UBC has already...
And your time is up, Ali. Thank you. We'll be moving on to closing statements. We'll be starting with Ali.
There's still questions left, Howard.
We have 2 more debates, so that is unfortunate.
For you or for us?
I guess for everyone.
Well, it's nice that you're showing your openness, brother.
Thank you everyone for your engagement here today. In closing, I invite all of you to join me in bringing major reforms to the SFSS. If elected, I will work hard to rebuild the damaged relationships between the SFSS and the student body and the staff, to advocate for an immediate tuition freeze, to step up the advocacy to approve the gondola. Therefore, I invite you to vote for a new vision and a new representation. Vote Ali Versi to be your next VP for a better and accountable SFSS. Thank you, and I look forward to your support.
Jasdeep.
This year, our student society is moving into a new student union building, welcoming and training a newly hired executive director, developing a 3-year strategic organizational plan, and renegotiating our agreement with QP. All these different changes and transitory period requires experience and a great work ethic. And my experience on this board in this past year proves that I have just that. So thank you all for being here today and for listening to us. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you. We would now like to call up the candidates for university relations.
We will begin with opening statements from each candidate, and we'll start from left to right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Russell Dunsford. I'm a third-year REM student running to be University Relations. I decided to run for University Relations because of my experience on board this past year. It's a big year for the society, and we've got a lot of important initiatives coming up with the new building, renegotiating collective bargaining, and I've become familiar with all these issues and I'm confident to take them on next year. I've additionally been involved in various university portfolios this year and would like to continue doing the work that I've begun.
Hi everyone, my name is Shaina, and I just want to first thank you all for attending today. I'm a 4th-year psychology student running to be your Vice President of University Relations, and I want to focus on building meaningful relationships and having construction updates and advocacy for the SFU gondola and the tuition freeze campaign, and I'm passionate about improving the experience of students here on campus.
Thank you. We will now move on to the IEC question. VP University Relations is a role that requires a great deal of activism. As such, how will you approach conflict with the university? And we'll start with you. Yep.
As the advocate for all of SFU, my main priority would be you all. And in terms of conflict, I would do my best to make sure that both parties are content in what we have decided.
In regards to conflict, I would have to put student issues first above the relationship with the university. And while I'd like to maintain a healthy relationship with the university whenever possible, I'm not willing to compromise the interests of students to do that.
Thank you. We will now start with questions from candidate, and we'll start with you.
So on your platform, you put free and open textbooks. How do you plan to provide value to students through open access initiatives?
With the free and open books, I want to work with the SFU Senate and try to encourage all the profs to actually use the source. That way, there will be a lot. Can you guys hear me properly?
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. I want to use that time with the SFU Senate to encourage profs to use that source. That way, all the books that we use will actually be will be available to students.
Thank you. And now you may do a rebuttal.
So as a member of Senate, I'm excited to work with them next year to advocate for open access textbooks. I'm also excited to work with the library, the bookstore, and BC campus to expand our open access curriculum. And I appreciate your dedication to the cause.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the second question from Shana.
So on your platform, you talk about the plastic water bottle ban and the increasing lighting on campus. Since SFU and the SFSS have already approved these things, what will you be doing to add on to them?
So SFU has yet to approve a bottled water ban, but I'm working hard with a group called Ban the Bottle who does a lot of great advocacy work to make that happen. In regards to campus lighting, I plan to do a review of lighting on campus, especially around residents, working with safety and risk services, and then working with them also to implement new lighting to improve that.
In regards to the lights on residents, who have you worked with there to actually know where it lacks and where you can improve the lighting? I don't know if you have ever lived on residence.
Now we will move on to audience questions.
Hi guys, no more long and complicated questions. My question is simple. What's SFU doing wrong?
Russell, you may start on this one.
So the problem with SFU and their interactions with student leaders is that they're not receptive to student interests. And while SFU likes to be good to their students, they have bigger priorities in reputation and money. And I think that students should be put higher on that list of priorities.
Thanks for your question. I don't know where you went. You're 100% right. I definitely think that with SFU, the main problem is that the school doesn't really know how to talk to the students because there's so many of us, and I feel like the SFSS isn't doing the best job as well in terms of trying to actually voice those concerns. So that's what I want to do by being the Vice President of University Relations.
Thank you.
Hey guys, so as you can imagine with Vice President of University Relations, your job is specifically that, the relations with the university. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of branches in SFU, ancillary services, student services. Within your job, if you are to be elected, what specific departments do you think need the most work from us? And what do you think SFSS can do differently to better engage the university to helping students?
Thanks for your question. I feel like the main department of SFU is definitely student services, and I feel like a lot of students work in that, but the ones that don't have no idea what is going on. And so to basically advocate in terms of trying to reach out to the ones that don't know, and you can't do that through online, you can't do that through online. I feel like the main thing that SFU needs to discuss is being able to talk to students one-on-one and trying to build those relationships.
I agree completely with Shaina that student services is the main department of SFU related to students. And in terms of how they could engage better with students, I'd like to see more outreach on their behalf, especially through channels such as social media. And I would be open to working with them to allow them to use society channels to communicate with students on important issues.
Hi. My question is more related to your past experience. So you both have experience working with your faculties, you as the EPA and Russell, you as the faculty rep. So can you talk about like the relationship that you guys have built and what improvements have you made in your faculty?
Sure. So I've worked with my faculty extensively this year through meeting with the department committee. I helped plan EnviroFrosh along with several other DSUs and student engagement coordinators from the faculty. And most of my work with the university has been outside of my faculty, because the Faculty of Environment is not in the center of the university sphere of influence. So I've worked with my faculty, but not to the extent that I've worked with the rest of the university.
I've been with FAST for the past 8 months, the last 8 months, and it was this great experience where I got to actually build and foster relationships within each departmental student union. And with my help, we were also able to have the first ever joint DSU events. We actually had 2. We had one in the summer and one in the fall, and that hadn't ever happened before. So I think just being able to be the person that is there to build that and see that happen was great.
Next question.
So, one thing I've always wondered about is, you know, we as the student society, being paid out of the students' pockets, we're running 300 clubs and 50 student unions. We're running a legal clinic, we're running a healthcare plan for all of our students and managing all that themselves. So where's the line between SFU's responsibility and our responsibility? Not necessarily realistically, but if in an ideal society, where would that line be?
Thanks for your question. I do believe that since all of us are here, because we're all students at SFU, and if we aren't able to work with the school in order to improve the experience, then I don't really see the point of that. I feel like we have to be able to use the school in terms not only for to achieve success in academics, but the school should also help us improve the experience overall. And I think the SFSS plays a huge part in that, but we can't 100% ignore what the school does too.
I think in an ideal society, a student union would function almost collaboratively as a department of the university, in which they would partner with the university on the various departments, safety and risk services, student services, and would act not necessarily as administrators of those departments, but just as a separate side of representation to those departments. And I would like to move us towards this model.
Thank you for other questions. We will now move on to the closing statements.
So I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. The society is going to take on some major tasks this year, and they're going to require a lot of motivation, strategy, and experience. I'd like to demonstrate all of these aspects if you give me the chance. And if you have any other questions, feel free to talk to me after the debates or reach out to me on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time here, and I just want to be the voice for you all, and I want to be someone who improves the experience of as many students as I can, and thank you all for attending today.
No. We're now going to do the 2 referendum questions on the sub-naming and the UPass. We'll start with the UPass.
Hello again. So I'm just here to make sure that everyone is informed that we have a very important UPass referendum vote coming up. I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of give a little bit more information about what this referendum is, and just make sure that students are aware that this vote is very important for us and that we should encourage as many people to vote as we possibly can. So over this past year, I've been working along with the Student Advisory Caucus for the UPass, along with TransLink, to negotiate a 5-year contract for the UPass. You can go on our SFSS.ca elections page to actually see the exact numbers for this fee increase for over the next 5 years. But to give you guys a breakdown, it will be starting January 1st, 2020 at $41. And at the end of April 30th, 2025, it will be $46. So this is an increase of approximately 2% over the 5 years. This is less than it has been in previous years, so it has been a great win for student unions across the province who actually use UPass. And this is a great referendum that we want to promote as much as we can to students. I would encourage you all to go on the elections page and to inform yourselves with the increases to your fees, as these are mandatory, and to also spread this information so that your friends are aware that this vote is going through. Now, we are a commuter school, so UPass is very important for us as it saves our students a lot of money every month. But at the same time, we do need this vote to pass. Every year it does pass. I think SFU is the one that passes it with the most majority yes vote. But just to make sure that everyone's aware, if this referendum is voted no by the students, that means we are kind of opting out of the UPass plan, which I don't think will happen for this school. But just to make sure that we're all aware of what the changes are and how this is going to be affecting your student fees, please make sure you spread the word and make sure you encourage everyone to vote. Thank you.
Jasdeep, is it a simple majority, just 50%?
I believe it is. I would have to double check that actually.
And is there any minimum requirement of number of students who need to vote for it to be considered valid?
I believe there is a minimum, but I would have to check.
It's 5%. I just want everyone to know. Okay, we'll move on to the next question, which is a sub-naming. Thank you, Jasdeep.
I'm Christina. Hopefully you guys remember, we did send out a little email to all of you to give us requests or suggestions for naming of the sub. So we got over 400 answers back. That being said, we did, the subcommittee, sat down and kind of shortlisted. So it came down to these four, the Den, the Hive, the Treehouse, and then the current name that it has, the Student Union Building or the sub. So basically, we just want to make sure you guys take the time to vote and pick the name, because this will be the final, the permanent name of your new student union building. So definitely be sure to check that out and vote for it.
Thank you. We would now like to call up the candidates for president. We will start with opening statements, and we'll go from left to right. So we'll start with Kia.
Hello, my name is Kia Salahi. I'm the current Faculty of Applied Science rep. So I want my focus for the next year to be shifting power back to the students. So the way I'm going to do that is try and empower groups like clubs and DSUs by giving them more support and funding. I'm also going to put a big focus on consultation so students can actually provide feedback. And I also want to do a bylaw reform so we can actually set standards on how the board can act and how they're restricted in their power.
Hi everyone, my name is Amrita Mohar and I'm running to be your next SFSS president. My experience with being a faculty representative on the current board of directors and being involved in many clubs, I understand what leadership skills need to be able to house 16 people on the board of directors. I've also addressed many of the issues that clubs and student unions face, and because of that I feel like I am equipped to be your next president. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Giovanni Hassan, he is, and I'm running to be the next president of the Simon Fraser Student Society. Over the last year and a half, I've been fighting on behalf of students, with students, for students. We've started the Tuition Freeze Now campaign, advocating against the proposed increases to tuition, and I have been fighting against the SFSS for evicting community groups on campus. In the past, we used to mobilize students for social change, but we have lost our mandate. It's time to prioritize students over profits.
Thank you. it'd be really nice if the audience would hold questions to the end, otherwise we're never going home. So we're going to start off with Giovanni. You can ask your question.
Okay, so there has been a lot of controversy over the last year, internal, with groups. How can we trust you? Which one? Anybody? Kia, how can we trust you to rebuild relationship and build back the reputation of the society while not trying to reach out to groups that you have hurt over the year? 79% of staff reported that they're having a toxic work environment, and you canceled the investigation into that, this whole staff issue. What will you do to rebuild relationships?
Thank you. Well, I'll address the staff part first. With the coming of the new executive director, we should be able to address a lot of the issues regarding staffing within the SFSS. The second part is about building community. And I've made it fairly clear over this past year that I'm actually in favor of the rotunda groups getting space in the new building. However, what it comes down to at the end of the day is that it's not a one-man decision. And it's the board of directors that end up having to make the decision. And unfortunately, my voice was outspoken, but the board voted against it. And so I'm going to put my effort into trying to rebuild these groups and trying to meet with them, as I did meet with some of the rotunda groups.
Thank you, Kia. Giovanni, you can rebuttal.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that commitment. Still vote for me. However, for the new executive director, the whole process has been rushed. The new executive director is the person who replaced the last one at his last company. So these are things that people aren't knowing because it's not in the open. And what I want is to bring a more collaborative environment and people know what's happening within the SFSS, because I'm sure none of you know that except people on the board, because they're hiding information, and we need to stop hiding information.
Amrita, you can ask your question.
My question is for Giovanni. What are your plans with the internal operations and governance for the SFSS?
So I know that many people may not know what's happening in terms of the internal operation because it's not communicated well. However, the SFSS shifted to a Carver model in 2015 where all operations are operated by one executive director without the input of the board. What needs to happen is a more collaborative environment with staff, and students actually are saying how they want the relationships to be run. So right now, I just say a collaborative process.
Thank you, Amrita. You can rebuttal.
How I plan to tackle the internal communications within the board as well as staff is by this. I was on the hiring committee for the executive director, so I was able to define and articulate what was needed for the SFSS in terms of the new sub-building opening and revamping and rebranding our services. And with that, I will address these concerns to the new executive director and the current climate at the SFSS, and myself and the executive director will instill why SFSS staff come into the workplace every day and motivate them.
Thank you. Kia, it's your turn to ask a question.
Sure. My question is for Gio. I know, like me, you're very passionate about getting space in the sub for the rotunda groups. I'm wondering that in the unfortunate case that the board in general decides to vote against it, how would you respond and how would you react to that?
So the board has this mantra of board solidarity, where they stifle the voices such as Kia, who was in opposition to a wider board issue. And board decisions are made and nobody knows what's up. The thing is, if I disagree with what the board is saying, it should be a fruitful debate that goes to the student body, and it's not just 16 board members making the decision, but your voice is actually heard within the decision making of the SFSS.
Thank you, Giovanni.
The way I see it is that there's a chance that you try and make an argument for the rotunda groups getting space, and it gets shut down. And I think as a president, to be able to lead, we need to at some point take a step back, realize that the board disagrees with our issues, and move on and deal with the many other pressing issues that actually occur within the SFSS and deal with those. So while I appreciate the answer, I think it makes sense that at the end of the day, if the board disagrees with you, there needs to be a way to move on and actually deal with the other many issues that as the SFSS we need to try to solve.
Okay, so we're going to skip the IEC question and go straight to the audience. We're going to stop the debate at 4:35 just because of the time that we have. So hopefully we can get through as much as we can. Please try to make your questions as clear and quick as possible.
Okay, so 30 candidates stood up today to present and talk about what they believe in. Out of those, 15 are going to be the people you're working with on board. So I want you guys to describe yourselves as honestly as possible. Why do you think you can inspire and lead these people?
We're going to start with Kia.
Sure. The one quality, the one thing that I would describe myself is I'm very honest and I'm very straightforward. And it helps me a lot because I'm able to talk to people very personally and just openly. And I've seen that it helps me a lot in previous experiences because it allows me to build a relationship with a person and yet still consider their point and consider their point of view. And so the way I would work with people is I'd talk to them, you know, I'd converse with them and I'd kind of understand them as a person and make sure that I'm able to actually listen to their voices and help them lead and support them on their initiatives.
Thank you, Kia. Amrita?
Thank you, Jeffrey, for the question. I think how I would support and foster a positive working environment with the board of directors is how I define what an SFSS president should be. And it's to be there for my board of directors and to facilitate whatever projects and initiatives they need. I've understand and I've had experience having with my predecessor, having a negative working environment. And for me personally, it took a mental and physical toll on me to the point where I didn't want to come to work every day. And if that's happening on my board term, then I'm not doing my job at all.
Thank you, Amrita. Gio?
I think one of the things about having a strong person who will work with the many board of directors that are there is building a strong vision that everybody can buy into. So recognizing that advocating for students is what the society is supposed to be doing will get people on board to recognizing that tuition freeze is a must. Students over profits, and all of these other issues that we as students need to start fighting on behalf of students instead of the pancake breakfast and all of those stuff. That's good, but as I said, it's not the main goal of the society. The main goal of the society is to fight for students.
Matthew?
So as the president, you act as the liaison between the board, the new executive director, and the staff. And because of that, you're entitled to a lot of power and influence that other board members don't have. Power that has been abused, especially in the last year. I mean, we saw the impeachment of the last one. However, with our current model of governance, every board member has an equal vote and equal voice. So given these facts, what structural changes are you planning to make to decentralize the power and ensure that all board members have an equal voice at the table?
We'll start with Gio.
So the president serves as a staff liaison officer as well as one person from union. Everybody on the board, as you said, should be having equal say in all of these things. What's been happening is with the Carver model, everything gets funneled straight to the executive director, and there is no input on the board overall. What I want to do is get rid of the Carver model and get back to what we had in 2015, which is why you saw a much more, very vocal student body, a vocal Sade Bucket ran a tuition freeze campaign in 2013. This is something.
Thank you, Gio. We're going to move on to Amrita.
Thank you for your question. Having experienced that type of abuse of power in my previous board term, I understand the value of all board members having that unified communication channel. And for me being president, working with my executive director, I will be the tunnel between the information being talked to with the executive director and between the farm reps and the executive team as well. I think when it comes to the important decisions and the information that all board members need to know, it will come through me, and I will be able to explain the situation with my executive director. Thank you.
This is a big issue that I'm actually working on quite a bit during this past year. I made a change to the executive committee, for example, that allows all board members to be able to vote on motions held there. So equality there is big for me, and one of the reasons I wanted to run for president was because knowing that I have that information, I can make sure that it's being sent to all the members. And one of the reasons bylaw reform is one of my major focuses on my campaign is because that's where we need to start. For us to be able to actually change our policies and make sure everyone is equal on an equal footing, bylaw reform is the main place that you need to go. And it's not a very sexy topic, but it's what causes real change.
Thank you, Kia.
Hi there. I was just wondering, how would each of you plan on addressing issues of sexual violence in the workplace given the failure of previous presidents?
We'll start with Kia.
Sure. So the first thing we can do is making sure we adopt GP44 correctly into our policies, and also making sure that we just have very clear written policies on how work is done. We can also make sure that when it comes to clubs and student groups, if we have clear guidelines on how they're supposed to do their events, then we can actually start providing security for them and making sure that's followed. Also, as president, being open and being able to talk to people is going to be one of my main jobs. So one thing I'm going to make sure is to actually talk to the people, talk to my team, and make sure that their voices are being heard, and if they have any concerns or if there's any...
Thank you, Kia. We'll move on to Amrita.
Thank you for your question. I want to address that this is something that's I take very heavily. I don't take lightly at all. I was one of the victims that experienced sexual harassment on the board, and it took emotional as well as a mental toll on me, as well as the other women that experienced this. That's why I don't want any board member experienced what I went through, and also experiencing the lack of resources and support that myself and other board members received. Myself, our VP External, and our Health Science Rep are now talking to SFU Admin on creating an MOU for the SFSS Board of Directors.
Thank you, Amrita. Gio?
I think we need to have a more extensive sexual violence and response prevention policy for the SFSS and for SFSS members. GP44 is for SFU. We need to create something for SFSS so that we can actually do our own consultation. We have Women's Center, we have a lot of resources at our disposal that we should be getting feedback and not just try to rush things through as 16 people. As I said, we need to spread the power not just among the 16.
Thank you, Gio. Jackson?
Hey guys, how do you intend to build a positive relationship with our incoming executive director?
We'll start with Amrita.
As mentioned before, I was on the hiring committee for the executive director. And as well as I mentioned before, that I'm able to define and articulate what the problems were at the SFSS. And we're at a point in our time where we are transitioning into a new sub-building. We have to rebrand and rebrand our resources. And the executive director that we have aligns with those values completely. So I plan to address the current climate that's happening with the SFSS, as well as our staff issues as well, and to create a constructive plan on how to action those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. Kia?
Hi. So, like I said, it's all about communication and openness and honesty. And so that's how I plan to lead forward on this, is to have plenty of open conversations and talk to the executive director. And I think it's not only important for myself to develop a relationship with the executive director, but also for the rest of the board to be able to develop a relationship. Because at the end of the day, I'm not making decisions by myself. The information shouldn't just be to me. And so I'm going to take a step to make sure that not only will I be able to have communication and develop a good relationship with the executive director, but so will the rest of the board, so we can all make decisions together as a team.
Gio?
I think we can build a very positive relationship with the executive director by the executive director recognizing that students' voices are supposed to be heard. And the last executive director didn't do that. And it's been a hurtful process. And this whole executive director process was rushed. And it should have been more than 2 consultations. It should have been much more deliberations with different people. But they're there, and we have to work together through consultation with many, many different groups.
Thank you, Gio.
And we can build through talking to students together.
Thank you, Gio.
So
Natalie?
Okay, so as most of us know, all 3 of you have been involved in the student space issue, some more than others. What is a fair and equitable way to continue the discussion about student space on campus while ensuring there is no conflict of interest? How can you convince the students like myself that you're speaking for all the students without past commitment influence?
Start with Gio.
I think that was definitely for me. I am very committed to the Black community on the campus. I won't be, and we need to recognize that there need to be equitable outcomes for the decisions that we make. So we created, amongst all the Rotunda community, the only person that wasn't at that table was SFSS, because SFSS did not want to meet with the groups. There are 22 bookable rooms in the sub for different clubs and DSUs, and there are 7 Rotunda community groups and 6 community groups and 7 spaces. That is a very equitable solution, in my opinion.
Thank you,
and
Gio.
for the board...
Gio, we're going to move on to Amrita.
Thank you for your question. I think in regards to the sub-building, the recent board has currently voted in on a shared space model. And this shared space model is able to have access to all student groups on campus to have space in the sub-building. It's supposed to build community and to spread awareness about all the clubs and student groups that are on campus, and it's all housed in one roof. I think when it comes to different groups on campus, the board has made it public that we are open to consultation and pursuing those avenues. And if I'm elected to be president, I won't shy away from that as well.
The way I see it is that there's a lot of history between the Rotunda groups and the SFSS, and it's come to the point where the board of directors are too biased to be able to make a right decision. And at the same time, I think it's too biased to simply give in. So what I had brought to the board meeting, and what I think is the right decision, is to fully represent the students. We should take it to the students and offer a referendum question. Now, unfortunately, the board shot me down when I brought this motion, but I'd be more than happy to open it up and actually be willing to put that referendum question again. However, I understand that the board has a lot of work, important work that they need to do. So if the team isn't willing to actually go forward with the referendum question...
Thank you, Kia. Go for it.
Okay, so I was wondering, because there is currently nothing in the SFSS dedicated to anything regarding disabilities, I was wondering what is your plans moving forward with that?
We'll start with Kia.
So one of the things I said is I want to do a bylaw reform, and that also includes looking at our policies a lot more. And the reason I think is because, when we removed a lot of our policies a few years ago, there was a lot regarding mental disabilities and also just disabilities as a general. And I think it's important that we have something written down to actually be able to help these people and also be able to fund them. And so what I want to do is bring back our policies and do a deep dive so we can actually provide support to all forms of students and not just essentially shy away from a group of people because our bylaws or
Thank you,
policies.
Kia. We're moving on to Amrita.
Thank you for your question. Right now, with the Simon Fraser Student Society, I was working on the communication channels and how to better improve it with our membership. So I've taken strides recently working with the Autistics United Club on how to improve the accessibility on our website, and that's not going to shy away from our society as a whole. And I agree with Kia that our bylaws need to reflect that, and since I've taken a very heavy perspective on this topic, that this will be a top priority for me.
So there's a lot of things about the past. When an institution with history doesn't forget or knows where it can go. So in the past, in the Accessibility Committee, there were dedicated seats for SUDS to be on the Accessibility Committee. When in 2015, with the new executive director, that was wiped out. And that's something that, in order to have more equitable outcomes, you need to have people at the table and you have representation. You can't be making decisions without the people being affected by the decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. Move on to the next question.
Hello. So how are you going to prioritize student interests such as affordability within your position as president? And more than that, how are you going to make sure student voices are central within that process? Thank you.
We'll start with Amrita.
Thank you for your question. In regards to that phase and topic, that's something that's taken very seriously, and many groups in SFU have been advocating to SFU in regards to that, and that's something that we'll be doing as well. I think keeping clear, open communication with our membership is something that I've addressed in my platform that I want to rebuild, and understanding the issues that they're facing. And right now on the board of directors, I've been trying to make those strides as well and having the conversations with students to figure out what's lacking.
Thank you, Amrita. We'll move on to Kia.
So I agree, student interests haven't been heard. In fact, right now, the only way you can really provide good feedback is if you're very involved or you have friends that are very involved. And so one of the things I want to do is implement a consultation system that not only allows board of directors to be able to represent their actual constituents more, but also make sure student feedback is heard. And this is something that I tested out earlier into the year. And so I think the main way to move forward is to have better consultation. And that's how you really learn about student interest. And more than learning about student interest, you learn how to actually address them.
Thank you, Kia. Gio?
I think the best way to tackle affordable education is to empower the groups and the campaigns that are doing it, and to also push for these changes as a board itself. For example, the Tuition Freeze Now campaign was endorsed reluctantly by the Simon Fraser Student Society. In our constitution, it says we are supposed to be fighting for universally accessible education. That's free education. To endorse a freeze and taking so long to do it is very problematic. And what I will bring to the table is to be on the front lines with the grassroots organizations.
Thank you, Gio. We're going to move on to the next question.
We've talked about this a little bit up to this point, but I wanted to ask each of the candidates to elaborate on their where they stand and what they plan to advocate moving forward for space for the Rotunda groups. All of the Rotunda groups that are being displaced have passionate, active communities within them. I believe all of them have student fees that are being collected from students, just like the SFSS, and so I wanted to ask where you're going to stand moving forward for space for these groups. And a previous candidate mentioned that with the FNSA and with SOCA that these are marginalized groups that are being further marginalized by the SFSS. I've personally benefited from.
Can you get to your question, please? We're over time.
SFPIRG and with CJSF, and a lot of other students have as well. So I would like to ask what you plan to advocate with regards to these groups moving forward.
We can start with Kia.
Sure. So like I stated earlier, I made my point pretty clear. I personally am in favor of these groups getting space in the sub. However, as a president, it's not just my job to make a decision, it's my job to lead. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back to the board and ask the board whether or not we're comfortable with moving with a referendum question. Because again, I think there's a lot of bias on the board and this should be able to be put out to the students and let them decide what they want. However, again, as president, my job being to lead, if the board is not comfortable with moving forward with that path, I'm not going to push it and do another year-long project and essentially waste board time that could be spent on.
Kia, your time is done. We're going to move on to Amrita.
Thank you for your question. The current board has made considerable efforts to house these groups somewhere on campus because the last two boards have already committed to prioritizing SFSS internal clubs and student unions through the shared space model. We've also worked hard with SFU this year to pursue a solution to house some of these external groups in existing space elsewhere on campus. And we've also committed to engaging a conversation even about Black community space on campus. And as I mentioned, we're open to consultation and talking to these groups a little bit more.
Thank you, Amrita. Giovanni?
Yes, so this is definitely something that I'm very passionate about. The Rotunda community brings a wealth of knowledge and a diverse perspectives that the board by itself, if they're in silos, will never understand. And I think it has to become a situation where we work together with these groups. For example, SFPIRG is a social justice center. SFSS will not be pushing social justice initiative unless people like me are there. However, we need to be working together, and we have to recognize that we're all student-facing organization, and students united will never be divided.
So we're going to do our last question. After this, we will move to closing statements. Go ahead.
So my question is, you guys all stated in your platforms your goals and your objectives being in the SFSS. But if you guys don't win, because two of you guys won't, what will you continue to do to push forward with your agenda? Because if you're truly passionate about these topics, you guys will have a game plan for what you're going to do afterwards.
So we're going to start with Giovanni.
So the good thing about me as a candidate is that I've been fighting before, and regardless of if I win, lose, or draw, I'll be fighting after. Just put...
Amrita?
Thank you for your question. My plan, if I do lose the presidency of the SFSS, is to still be involved with the SFSS. There are many committees on board, and they need at-large reps, and I will be the first one to be signing up for those and seeing what I can do as an at-large rep for those committees. And also, I'm still on the Senate board, so I will be pushing my agenda through there as well. Thank you.
I publicly announced to a bunch of people that regardless of whether or not I win, I want this bylaw reform to happen because it's old, it's archaic, and it doesn't restrict the powers of the board, and it's not good. It has loops and flaws. And so I'm going to make this public, as I've told many people, regardless of whether or not I win, I'm going to be pushing hard on this bylaw reform, and I'm going to make sure it happens, because that's what causes real change, and that's something that SFSS has needed to have done years ago, and it still hasn't. So, yeah.
Thank you for the audience questions. We will do closing statements, starting with Giovanni.
This election is about vision versus image. The independent organizations aren't happy. The clubs and student unions aren't happy, and we aren't